Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how to plant a bare root hedge. I'm going to take you through the whole process from purchasing to planting, so let's get to it. Before we get planting, here's some information on what bare root plants are and a guide to help you buying them. A bare root plant is a tree or shrub that comes as it sounds, with their roots bare of soil. This makes them one of the most cost-effective options for planting hedges, orchards, rose gardens and forests. They come in a range of sizes, up to about 2 meters with some exceptions. Anything larger than that, you'd need to buy a root board or container grown plant. Bare root plants are grown in a field and are available from late November to the end of March, as that's when they are dormant, so can be transplanted without too much disruption. You usually buy them in bundles, and bare roots come in a variety of types, which dictates their shape, such as whips, feathered and standard trees. Bare roots differ from root balls as they are grown in lighter, sandier soils, so when they are dug up, the soil remains in the field and you just get the plant's roots, whereas root ball plants are grown in heavier soils, so when they're dug up, the soil gets sold with them. If you're interested, I've got a separate video on root ball plants, so you can find that one on my channel. Before buying your plants, you want to measure up the area that you're going to plant up, allowing enough space for each plant to grow. You can use a tape measure, but I like to use the old-fashioned method of just pacing it out in feet. Once you know how many you need, you want to make sure the bare root plants that you buy have been recently dug out of the ground, rather than sitting around for a long time without any soil or water. You can tell this when purchasing them if the leaves or needles have wilted and are dropping off, or if there is any general limpness to the plant. If the plant doesn't have any leaves because it's deciduous, then you can look at the buds to see if they are firm rather than dried up. With these, I could see when opening the bag at the base there was very minimal needle drop, and the plants were firm and healthy. As soon as you've got them, remove them from the bag. This allows light and airflow to get around them. If they're left in the bag, the needles or leaves will start to drop and mould can build up in there. Then put them in a bucket, separate them if they're in any bundles, and fill with water to let the roots soak. This will allow the plants to rehydrate themselves before planting. Previously, to prepare the area, I removed a dying holly hedge, as it had been in for many years and had never really grown much, as I believe it may have had a blight. You can see how one section is not healthy and did not establish properly in comparison to the lush, thick holly hedge this side. I chose to replace it with a hardier, more tolerant plant, this yew. So I removed the old holly hedge. After that, I dug over the soil to create a lighter, airier soil structure. Last thing I did to prepare the ground was to add some nutritious organic matter, which I chose to use horse manure, and just added it to the top of the soil, so when the yews are planted, the horse manure will automatically be dug into the soil. To plant out your hedge, you first want to position your plants, spacing them out evenly. Along this hedge line, I'll be planting 60 yews in total, over 3 sections, so have allowed a certain number for each section. I'm spacing these plants out roughly a foot apart, so it quickly grows together and forms a dense hedge. So I'm just going to show you how to plant the first few. So a foot away from the original, which is going to be there. I'll come down a bit closer. So I'm just digging out the soil, making a small hole for this one, then making sure all the roots are in the hole. Then gently backfilling so the soil height would be the same height as it was in the field, which would come up to about here, just before the roots start. So you want to bury them up to this point here. And then I hold the bare root plant and just gently firm with my toe. These are very small, so you don't need to heel them in. And then you can see it's kind of compacted around there. So once I've done that, I just grab my fork, any remaining soil and mulch, I just dress around the top there, and that's nice and firm. So measuring again, as these are small plants, I'm only planting them a foot apart. If you've got larger plants, then you'll have to plant them a little bit further apart. Removing some of the soil, putting the plant in the centre of the hole with all of the roots in the hole. Dressing the soil around and gently firming with my toe. I'm not using my whole weight on my toe either, just a gentle firm, and then dressing the rest of that soil around and fluffing it up so the soil's not compact. Then this can act a bit of an insulation as well, as there's air within there. So my heel is at the back of the previous plant, and I'm going to start to dig where my toe is. Some of them you'll find have bigger roots than others. Sometimes they'll be splayed out apart, and you may need to just tuck them in together like that to plant it. Rather than having roots super wide, you can just tuck them in together and plant it like that. So that's in the ground. I don't know if you can see, these were the lower roots, so I need to make sure they're going to tuck right down there. Those were roots from the base that, as I put it in the ground, had splayed up like that. You want to make sure that that doesn't happen and that they are facing down. Same again, dressing it with soil. Lightly firming with your toe. And then getting the fork, just tilling the soil around there. And it's as simple as that. Now you may find some with very small roots, like this one, which you can use a technique called slot planting, which is creating a slot in the ground like so, making sure all the roots are in there, and then just closing up the slot with your foot. This is a technique that you would use when planting whips, as usually you'll plant them in the hundreds or thousands, so it's a quicker way of planting, but you can get away with it with smaller bare rooted plants like that. And also it's going to depend on the soil as well. If it's good soil like this, then I could probably get away with a lot of these slot planting, to be honest. So you can do it that way, and that opens up, placing that in there, and firming around. Same again, as you can see, both areas are compact, so recommend just coming in with a fork just to aerate that soil and fluff up the mulch. So sometimes you can actually scoop out the soil and leave it on your spade and just tilt it, exposing a hole down there where you can then put your plant in, and then tip the soil back on top, and that can speed up the process of planting. Here's a good example of the plant with wide roots that they've splayed out, which, to save digging a larger hole, you can just bend them in and plant it in together like so, rather than digging a wide hole which may disrupt the other ones around it. Similar with this, you can just tuck this down the centre rather than digging a hole that's that wide. You can place it down the middle like so and plant it. Make sure it is that depth, as you don't want these roots to be turned upward. You would want them still facing down, but it's just to minimise the width of your hole and to make planting that bit easier. Right, it's time to get the rest of these ones in. But it's not complicated at all, very simple hedge plant. They can be done relatively quickly. and it's not strenuous as it's working with smaller plants that are very lightweight as they don't have the soil on. On this last one I thought I'd do a final tip for you. So make sure their leaves or needles are facing in the right direction. As you can kind of see that that's the back of it, as the needles are going that way. You can see that that's a darker green, so that's where the needles are facing. So when you are planting, you can lift the soil up like this and then tuck the plant underneath. Although this one does have quite a wide root section, what I'm going to do is tuck it underneath that pile and press against one side, and then the weight of the soil is going to pull down these roots, so they're going to be facing downwards. I'll show you what I mean. By digging that up, I'm tucking the plant underneath, and then the soil, then the weight of the soil pulls down the plant's roots, and it's in the right position. You can just firm it in with your toe. So it's a similar technique to slot planting, but you're still loosening up all that soil around and making sure all of those roots are well buried, even when it has larger roots like this one. Now that's about as close as I would plant them, as if they're any closer, within no time at all the branches would be touching each other and they'll be competing with each other. So this is a good distance apart to plant a hedge of this size, so it fills in quick enough but without competing and overcrowding. To get them in a straight line, I would usually recommend putting in a string line like I did in my root ball hedge plant video and planting them against that line. However, in this situation I have a straight boundary line at the back and a straight edge along the front. So as long as I plant them in the middle of this gap, then I know it's going to be straight. So I removed the previous hedge a couple of weeks ago and dressed the soil with horse manure. And planting it 2 weeks on, you can really see the impact of horse manure. The amount of worms that have come up to the surface when digging and are bringing the manure down into the soil is amazing. So as I plant this, I can see it's going to be really nutritious for the new hedge to be established in. Something worth mentioning is bare roots don't have to be used for planting a new hedge. You can buy them to fill in any gaps you may have in an existing hedge, which is what I'm doing here. Now, even though these are smaller bare root plants, you'll find they'll establish quicker, as the younger the plant is, the more tolerant it is to being moved and transplanted, and the quicker it will establish and get its roots in and start growing, as larger plants can take a little bit more time to get established once being transplanted. This section of hedge was planted 2 years ago with the same size bare root plants, and you can see how well it's established and grown together in such a short period of time. Considering yews are a slow growing plant, I think they've established really nicely, and within no time at all, this is going to be a tall, thick hedge. That's it for this video. Hope you found it educational and entertaining, and it's given you the knowledge to plant your own hedge. Don't forget, before you go, to do all those good things: liking, commenting and subscribing. I hate to ask, but it really does help the YouTube algorithm recommend more of my videos to more people, which then in turn helps me to create more educational gardening videos like this one. So if you're doing all those good things, thank you, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.